Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Sew Crafty with Connie. Today I wanted to show y'all how to make this pillow out of men's ties. It can make a special gift for a loved one, for a memory pillow, and it's pretty easy to do. So if you like this video and it helps you, please give me a big thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. So let's go ahead and get started on this. And the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to prepare your ties. So let's go ahead and do that now. So to do this, you want to go ahead and gather your materials. You want to get the ties that you're gonna be using, and you can either use a pillow form or you can use stuffing. I'm going to use stuffing for mine because the back of my pillow is going to be this handkerchief, and this is kind of an odd size, and so I just wanted to make sure that I would be able to turn it into a pillow correctly. So I'm just going to stuff it with stuffing instead of using a pillow form. This is actually ties from my cousin's dad, and so she wanted me to make her some pillows, so that's what I'm doing now, and I thought I'd go ahead and give a tutorial, show y'all how to do it. These handkerchiefs were his as well, and so this is going to make a nice special memory gift for her sisters. So the ties, some of the ties were regular ties, but some of the ties she gave me were these clip-on ties. Now these will work too, and there's a way that you can get these off of the clips. What I've done is my pillows are not very big, so all I had to do was I just cut it from the top right here, and I just used this part. But I'm gonna go ahead and show y'all, if y'all want to use the whole tie, I'm gonna go ahead and show y'all how to take it off of here. Now, if you notice, there's a little clip looking thing right here that's poking up, and there's also two threads or three threads there, and so you can either get a seam ripper or scissors to cut those threads off like that, and then it kind of comes apart, and then you can just kind of pull this out. If it doesn't work, or if it doesn't make it too easy, then you can still go ahead and just kind of cut around it as well, because you're not going to be using the whole tie. You're just going to be using a portion of it, depending on how big your pillow is. And you can also figure out which part of the tie you want to use. And if you've kind of, cut this up, then you can also use another part of the tie. So now I'm just going to pull this side out, and then I'm going to pull that part out like that. And so this is the tie that it was on. And then actually, when you take it off and you undo it, it's a big long tie like this. Now it had like a little screw there. Now some of them are different, and so it kind of, messed up this part right here, so you wouldn't be able to use that. But if you're going to cut it up anyway, that's not going to really matter. So you can use this in, or you can use this in, or you can even use them smaller. So a lot of them, like I said, are different. And so if you have one that's got a pretty snug little area here, then I would get your seam ripper and just rip through the seam and pull it out. So I'm just going to find one of the threads, and I'm just going to go under it and rip it out like that. And then you can continue to either pull it or you can rip it out. And the sides, it's not going to matter about the sides because you're not going to use that part anyway. This is just a real simple pillow that I'm going to do, and I'm not using the whole tie anyway, but I just wanted to show y'all how to do this. and then you can come down on this end and then you can rip it. Or if it's too hard to rip, just take your scissors and you can just cut it open like that. And then you want to remove the lining that's inside. I'm going to just go ahead and cut the rest of this up. And like I said before, this is just a basic design for the pillow. And so I'm just going to open all this up, and I'm going to pull out the part that's inside, and then just kind of rip it up like that. Okay, and I'm just going to throw that away. Now, like I said, I'm only going to be using this part of the tie. So I'm just going to take my scissors and cut that part off right there. And then you can use the rest of this for something else or another design. Or if you wanted to use a tie with like two ties in one, and then you could cut each end and put it in one pillow, or make two different pillows, however you want to do it. But I'm not going to need this part because I had plenty of ties to work with. So I've got this ready to prep, and then I've finished my other ones. I've got those all ready to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut a slip through this part right here and just open it up like that. And now we're going to go ahead and prepare these. You want to put some interfacing, iron some interfacing on the back of each of them, and that'll help it make it easier to sew with, because some of these are really thin and you know it's just going to be really hard to sew with. So I'm just going to cut some featherweight interfacing and iron them on the back. Okay, I got my interfacing here. This is a lightweight. You can either get featherweight or lightweight. Either one works for these. I wouldn't get too stiff of a one because they're just not going to lay right when you do that. So I've got my interfacing here, and I'm just going to take the one that I just did, and I'm just going to kind of measure it and cut out a piece of interfacing for it. You can get this stuff at Joann's and Hobby Lobby on you can get like a whole bolt for not too much. It's pretty cheap. So you want to find the side that's got the bumps on it, and that's the side you're gonna press down onto your fabric. So I've got my iron. Now, because of these ties are silk or linen, whatever they may be made of, you do not want your iron on the hottest setting, because it will kind of melt it. So first I'm just going to kind of open it up some, iron it flat so it's easier to iron the interfacing on. And then I'm going to put the interfacing on the wrong side of the tie. Okay, so I'm just gonna open this up. Now it doesn't matter if it's not the exact fit. For me it doesn't, because I know I'm not going to use a big piece of this tie because I've got so many I want, and I want to fit it on that handkerchief for the back. I'm only going to use the middle part of it. So if I have some interfacing that's not all on the whole tie, it's okay. So now you're just going to kind of press the interfacing in place. And then when you're doing the interfacing, just kind of press it and hold it. I wouldn't really go all the way, just slide it over it. And now if you notice here, I'm not using this part, so I'm not going to iron it, because if you do, then you'll mess it up. You won't mess it up, but you won't be able to use this part of the interfacing. So I'm just going to iron the part that I do need, and I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to use this later for like a little piece. So just kind of save some. And I'm just going to turn it over and give it one more good press so it looks as flat as it can be on here. Okay. And so I think that's pretty good, because what I'm going to do is probably cut this strip right here. And so I got my interfacing ironed on. So now I'm going to set that aside. Now I'm going to do the next one. And this one's a little bit bigger. And so I know I'm not going to use the whole part of this tie. So I'm just going to take my interfacing and cut out a width that I think is going to be good enough. I would cut the width out bigger than what you think you're going to use it. And then just lay it on the tie. Now I'm going to flatten it down. I've got it on the wrong side of the tie. And I've got my interfacing bumpy side down. And I'm just going to press it down. And then I'm going to cut off this part that I'm not going to use. Set it aside, save it for later. And then I'm going to turn this over. Iron this flat. And again, I'm probably just going to make a cut the strip right here in the middle. So that one's done, and now I'm going to continue to do that with the rest of my ties. Just iron on interfacing and iron it flat. Okay, now I want to cut my ties, and I want to cut them the size that I think will fit for the pillow that I'm going to use. Well, mainly for the handkerchief, because this is going to be my back. And so I've got 10 here, and they're probably going to be kind of big, and so I'm going to need to cut them in smaller strips. And so I've cut a few here already in strips, and I've lined them up to see if I need to make them any smaller. So I've got the handkerchief here, and then I'll just lay this on top, and as you can see, it's a little bit bigger. So I do need to make my ties smaller. And you can do any kind of design if you want. This is just a really, like I said, really simple one. So I think I'm going to take this tie right here. I'm going to line it up on my mat, and I'm going to use the line here, and I'm going to cut this one down to 2 inches. I first started cutting them 3 inches, and now I did 2.5, and now I'm cutting them to 2 inches. Some of them can be smaller, some of them can be bigger. It's just up to you, however you want to do it. And so this one over here, the purple one, I think I'm going to cut a little smaller, so I'm going to line it up on the line here, and then I think I'm going to do it 1.5 inches. Now remember, as you're cutting these, you need to make sure that you allow for seam allowance. Okay, and so now I think this one, I'll go ahead and cut this one a little smaller. It's got a stain right here, so I'm just gonna cut this at 1.5 inches also, and then just kind of cut that stain off. I think some of the stains are good to leave on there because it gives it character, and you know, there may be something that happened that's a good memory, or you know, even if the ties are really old as well, that can show too that their age, which I think is really neat. Okay, so I'm going to also cut this one down, and I'm going to cut it also at 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to line the line up. And what I'm doing is I'm finding the 1.5 inches, which is right here on the board. And I'm taking my ruler and I am putting the line that's right here that gives it enough space to make 1/2 inch on this line right here. And that gives me, I'm evening it up, so that gives me a straight edge. Okay, so I've got those cut. And now I want to go ahead and cut this one, and I left a full one so y'all could see how I'm doing it. I'm putting the point at the 15 mark right here, just so I can make sure I have it straight. And then I believe I'm going to cut this one also 2 inches. And then I'm just going to find a spot in the middle, a little bit further over, because you're going to be cutting on both sides. And then I'm going to cut this off, and then I'm going to move this over 2 inches, and then I'm going to cut this part off. Okay, and then I have my 2-inch strip right here. Now let's lay these out and see if this is going to be okay for the handkerchief. And like I said, remember, you are going to have seam allowance, and the seam allowance is about 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch. It's whatever you want to use. But for the ties, as silky as this is, I like to use a bigger seam allowance than 1/4 of an inch. So I think this will work out good. And I'm going to follow the line here to go all the way around. Now for the bottom, some of them are shorter, so I might have to use a closer line to the center, which I can do that. That won't be a problem. Now I want to lay them out how I want to sew them. So I think I always like to have like a solid design stripe, something like that. So I find the design that I like best. And if it's different colors, it seems that burgundy and blue and purple are the colors that are the biggest colors in this one. And so I'm just going to kind of put those together to where they're not all the same, or not all matched up, like blue is not next to each other. That I'm going to kind of stagger it. So I consider this is like a design with a burgundy look. And then so here's kind of like a blue and a brown. I'll put that there. And then here's another blue. I'll set that right there. And then here's one with a design. I'll set this one here. And then I kind of want a solid in between there, so I'll put that here. And then here's a design there. And I kind of like to have a blue next to it to kind of break up the purple and burgundy. Okay, now. All right, I think I am happy with that design. Let me try something here and see how this looks. I think I like it better the other way because there's not two solids. This one, the interfacing is having a lot of trouble staying on this one, so I'm going to have to re-iron it. Same with this. Okay, so I think I have the way I want to sew it together. And so what I'm going to do is pick these up accordingly and take them over to the sewing machine and get them sewed up. But first, I'm going to try to iron these again to stick the interfacing on a little more for those. Okay, I've reattached the interfacing, and I'm going to pick these up in this order, take them over to my sewing machine to sew them together. And the way you do that is this is going to be on the left side, and they're all going to be sewn like this, and so on. So what I want to do is I'm going to put this one, I start from the left, and then I'm going to take each one and lay it on top of the one before that. And that keeps the order of how you're going to sew. And then the last one I'm going to take and put it face down like that. So that's how I know those ones are going to be sewed together. Okay, so let's go ahead and take these to the sewing machine and sew them together. Now we're ready to sew our ties together. So this is the one that was on the first one on the right. So I'm just going to take these two and I'm just going to put them right sides together. And I'm just going to line up the edges and I'm going to sew a straight seam all the way down that edge. And I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot, about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, if you've never done this before, you may want to pin them before you sew because they can get, it's very slippery. These ties can get very slippery. So I would, if you've never done this before, then I would go ahead and pin them together so they don't slide around. Okay, so now I want to take the next one and I want it to be on this side. So I'm gonna do like this, fold it over. And then again, I'm going to kind of line up the top edges, and then I'm going to line up the sides, and again, sew all the way down. Since this one's a little smaller, I think I'm going to use a maybe about 1/4 of an inch. Now I think I'll use the 3/8 of an inch. That way we'll just have a little extra security. And I got plenty of ties. Okay, so I've got that one sewn on. All right. So now I'm going to take the third one, and it's going to be on this side like this. So I'm just going to flip this over and line up the tops. And then I'm going to line up the edges. And again, using 3/8 seam allowance, the edge of my presser foot, so all the way down. Remember, your edge of your presser foot may not be 3/8 of an inch. So, they're all different. Okay, so now I'm just going to continue that until I have them all sewn together. Okay, I got all my ties sewn together, and I added a few more to make it long enough for the back of that handkerchief. And that's the good thing about these, is if you just use one end and you need to make it bigger, you can always use the other end to make it longer. So now you want to flip it over, and you want to kind of iron these seams flat, just to kind of give it a little bit flatter look. And just do that for the whole thing. And then what I do is just whichever way the seams are laying, that's how I iron them down. It just makes it easier. Okay, so after you do that, you're going to flip it over and just kind of iron the front down. Okay, now I'm going to take my handkerchief and I'm going to lay it on the top. I'm going to figure out a best way to sew it, and I'm going to sew it like that. It's kind of laying on the middle, so there's no, all the edges seem to be okay. All right. And now I'm going to pin it in place so it doesn't shift around while I'm sewing. And then I'm going to find the best lines to sew around. So let's go ahead and, after we get it pinned, take it to the sewing machine and go ahead and get it sewn up. Now, I think the lines that I'm going to use to sew, I believe are, I'm going to sew on here, these lines here, and then I'm going to sew, I believe, in the middle ones right here. I may be able to sew, yeah, I think I'm going to sew the ends on these, and then maybe the big one right here. All right, so now that we've got it figured out how we're going to sew it, let's go ahead and take it to this machine and get it sewn up. So now I'm going to start at one end, and I'm going to sew all the way around, and I'm going to leave about a 3-inch gap so I can stuff it when I get through sewing. So let's go ahead and start sewing it up now. So now I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to leave a 3-inch gap there so I can stuff it. So I got it all sewn up, and now we're going to remove the pins and go back to the cutting mat, and we're going to clip the corners and get ready to stuff it. All sewn up. I've got my gap here to stuff it. Now we want to trim the corners and clip close to the seam. So I'm going to trim my corners first. And some of the ties didn't get in there, but that's okay because I was able to, there's the ties, those ties are in there too, the other ends. So they're all going to be in there. So I'm just going to clip about a fourth of an inch from the seam that I just sewed. Be careful not to clip your seams. Now for this part, I'm going to leave it a little bit longer, so when I close it up, I'll be able to have something to stitch to. Okay, got all that clipped off. Now you want to turn it right side out. So I'm just going to flip it like this. And you want to poke out your corners really good. So I'm going to use a little skewer stick here. Poke out my corners. Okay. All right, I got my corners poked up, and I've got the pillow turned right side out. And there it is. Now we're going to go ahead and stuff it. some stuff in here, and it's your preference how much you want to stuff in it, how thick or full you want it to be. And so I'm just going to put some in here, and then I'm going to kind of poke it over in the corners when I put it in there, so there'll be some showing up in the corners. And you want to do that for all the corners, because you want to make sure that the corners are kind of poofed out too. And so I'm just going to continue to stuff it until I'm happy with how big it is. Okay, I got my pillow stuffed the way I want it, and now I'm just going to do a real simple stitch to close it up. You can do a slip stitch, a ladder stitch, whatever you want to do. Now I'm just going to do a real simple stitch to close it up. And I've got my two ends together, and I've got them pinned together as well to keep them pinned, to keep them closed easier. And then I'm just going through and taking the very tip of the edge and just sewing it closed. And there's other stitches that you can do. Ladder stitch. This is just easier. And we're just slipping it through the top. And you're doing it, since you're doing it so close to the top, it makes it more difficult to see, which is good. Okay. Now I'm just going to do one more stitch, and then I'm just going to put my needle through the loop of this thread a couple of times and just tie it off. And then I'm going to cut down to the knot, take my pin out, and that's it. So now you have a nice little tie pillow, and I have made 4 more with the set of ties that belong to the same man. There you go. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. If you have any questions about this, feel free to send me an email or a comment. Email is flemingconnieg@gmail.com. I'd love to see your works if y'all decide to make one. I hope y'all have a nice rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.